AskReddit by Vantla Shanster. What's the biggest subtle green flag in a new partner? An ability to be respectful while disagreeing. Deleted. You go on a road trip together and still like each other at the end of it. My future wife and I drove from Newport, RI to Denver, CO, to Charleston, SC, and picked up a cat, and back to Newport over about 2 weeks, about a year after we met. We are still together, 25 years married next month, and still take road trips together when possible. You comfortably transition from talking all the time when together to hanging out quietly. I got downvoted and called a weirdo on Reddit for commenting that my GF and I would spend entire nights together without saying more than 5 sentences. Active listening. I never realized how refreshing it was to meet someone that didn't have to be doing something else while having a conversation. My wife and I share that in common, and it stood out to both of us when we first met. I've only ever met a handful of people who are truly gifted at active listening. It's a very nice trait, but not common. Most people just listen to respond, myself included, most of the time. When I met my girlfriend, one of the first things I noticed was that I always felt heard. When I said something in her presence, there was no doubt in my mind that she would give it her full attention. It's an amazing feeling. For a second I thought I read you always felt hard. Which also would have been good, I guess. Checking in on you to make sure you're doing okay during group events is a good one. And particularly for new partners. The rest of the thread is just naming green flags in general. Taking time to still prioritize themselves and their hobbies, interests. I don't want to be someone's all-encompassing life. I want them happy and living their life in the ways they want just as much as I want time to blend out lives in other ways. 100%. It is exhausting being someone's entire social life. It sounds cute to have someone that revolves around you, but it's both draining and boring. There's nothing interesting to learn from them when they have nothing going on outside of you. You can't be all things to someone, and that's fine. They should have the friends that they, IDK, go do yoga with or watch sports with, who can really enjoy those things and bring out that side in them, while you can do your own thing. And then you both have new stories and experiences to share when you come together. Maybe not too subtle, but maybe it is. When the person really wants to see you and is adamant about pinning down a specific time and place to see each other again and doesn't play the "I'll call you" game. I remember my first date with my now husband of almost 20 years. We met via an online dating site. Honestly, I wasn't bowled over by him. The date was good, not great. However, at the end of the date, he looked at me square in the eye and said, "I really like you and want to see you again. Are you free next Saturday?" I admired his directness. I said yes. He said, "But I'll pick you up at 7 PM on Saturday and we can go out for dinner." He did exactly that and we had a much better time on our second date. He was actually really nervous on our first date, which made him seem a bit standoffish. Well, here we are 20 years into, kids later. When you can be 100% yourself around them, quirks and all, and they cherish it. Being neurodivergent and going from dating someone who did not understand that to someone who is also neurodivergent, this is huge. I don't feel like I need to explain everything I do or that I constantly need to stop and double back because I'm getting met with a blank stare. I also don't have any judgment when I talk about sensory stuff, which makes it a lot less stressful when I have problems. When they listen and take an interest in something you find interesting and want to share with them, even if it's not something they personally care much about. I love birds, and if I see a bird of prey I get excited. I point them out to my husband and he'll always watch them with me and ask me what it is, etc. Even though his interest in birds is minimal and he probably wouldn't even notice them if I didn't point them out. I took an interest in crows a few years back, and while my husband doesn't know much about them, he supports me keeping peanuts in the car and feeding them whenever I see them. Lol. I also befriended some grackles, thinking they were crows because I had no idea at the time crows were twice as big as grackles, where my husband and I worked. They would caw at him anytime they saw him, but none of my former co-workers, because they knew he would tell me and I'd come feed them lol. On mine and my boyfriend's first date we were kissing quite a bit. We had already agreed not to have sex for a while, so whenever my shirt started riding up, he pulled it back down. Probably sounds very strange, but it was also very caring and let me know he respected boundaries. Laville Tigers, you have a kind and decent one. And you are a perceptive and empathic woman to note that fine detail. I fear you may have met the love of your life. Gives you space for a life outside of them. Is not threatened by you having a life that doesn't revolve around them, especially at the very early stages. When we first started dating, anytime my partner mentioned a movie the other hadn't seen or an activity we'd like to do together, I'd say put it on the list. One time immediately after I said it, she was typing away on her phone. I was curious as to what she was so fixed on and she said she was putting it on the list. Turned her phone around to show me she'd been compiling an actual list so that we wouldn't forget and always have a go-to reference if we ever didn't know what we felt like doing some random time in the future. My heart melted. I love that woman. We have a couple of shared lists on Google Keep Notes. Groceries. Add things as soon as you think of it, otherwise it's gone. Movies and TV shows, because when you read about a new one or a friend recommends something, the next minute you'll forget it entirely. It's a lot easier to have actual lists than pretend like you'll actually remember these kinds of things. No matter how angry you are at one another, you will still go out of your way or they go out of their way to help. I'll be wicked pissed, but I'll angrily make my wife her favorite dinner even though I don't want to eat. No matter how angry we are at one another, usually only last a short period of time, we will never sabotage or try to teach them a lesson. Many times, it ends up being both apologizing to one another. Arguing and getting angry is just part of a relationship and unavoidable. It is how you deal with it that sets it apart from a healthy relationship versus a bad one. After 26 years of marriage, I entirely concur. She paid attention to our conversation. I never saw her phone. This was also a subtle green flag for me when I first started dating my husband. When I would come over his place, we would both leave our phones on the kitchen counter and ignore them for the entire evening. That while they like you and support you, that they would be okay without you. Like they have a job, a plan, or a direction of some sort. They're not waiting for you to show up and give them a reason for being. That's not to say that you can't do great things together, but being with them is like joining a story rather than creating one from scratch. They rationally talk during arguments, not yelling accusations. I am really reactive and trying to improve my responses to my partner who is exceptionally rational and calm. Do you have any tips, advice on small things I can do to improve? I've made a lot of progress but sometimes regress. They show initiative to want to be around you and hang out with you, but they also avoid going overboard and being ticklingy or even possessive. Yes. When I first met my husband, he warned me that while he had a desk job, he often left his phone at his desk when engaging with his colleagues, so he set the expectation very early on that he wouldn't be accessible during work hours often. I was happy for his feedback, but quickly noticed after a couple weeks of dating exclusively that he started responding to my texts during the workday. He was excited to stay in touch with me during the day, and that was a huge green flag. When they really listen when you talk, not just waiting for their turn to speak, they care about your thoughts and feelings and remember the little things you tell them and consistent. Listening and validating what you say, not always agreeing, but just acknowledging the positive side of what you think and being able to present their perspective in a way that doesn't diminish yours. Being helpful and considerate, volunteering effort. If they rescue stranded worm on the sidewalk after the rain. But what if your partner was that worm? I'll start with the red and then flip it to the green. For me, it's always a warning sign when I'm worried about introducing someone I'm dating to friends or family. So, once I was dating someone and the first time she met my friend group was at a kickball game. Afterwards I realized that not once was I worried about leaving her with any of my friends while I was at bat or we were in the field. I knew that she wouldn't do anything to embarrass herself or me, and B, she could hold her own. After that I've noticed that some people just make me confident that they can act and dress appropriately no matter what the situation, formal wedding or party fine. Slumming it day drinking fine. Hanging with C-level execs check. Knuckle dragging army buddies she can handle their lowbrow humor. There is an old story of a guy who goes around giving everyone goose liver for Christmas. Everyone thinks he is a crackpot. But it turns out he just really likes goose liver and keeps giving people a thing he enjoys but is always sad because nobody ever gives him presents of goose liver. Find a partner who cares enough about you to recognize your goose liver and give it to you. Someone who looks for and gives you things that make you happy even if that isn't their happy. Along the same lines is the idea of the 5 love languages. It is a green flag to have a partner who recognizes your love language and makes the effort to use it to communicate their love of you rather than expecting you to understand them when they express their love of you in their love language. I asked my husband what his love language was when we were first dating and he said English. The key subtle sign of a great start with a new partner is truly enjoying each other's company, even in ordinary moments. Life is full of those, and having someone to share them with is really important. Yes. I am firmly of the opinion that grocery shopping can be a great date activity with the right person. Kindness and compassion to people in different situations.